Good Friday morning. Tim Radford here with you on WKRK 105.5 FM, 1320 AM, cable TV channel 25, worldwide at country.am. You can also find us on Google Home and Amazon Alexa, plus a handful of smartphone apps. And right now we're also on Facebook Live. And our guest today, here at it's close enough to 11:05 to go ahead and round up, Sheriff Derek Palmer, and a special guest. His guest today is Dr. Gina Conley from the Cherokee County Schools, our lovely superintendent. Welcome.
Good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the show. And you guys never get enough camera airtime.
We don't.
We don't.
We never see each other either, do we? Don't
No.
talk to each other.
Never get to see.
As a matter of fact, if we don't communicate one day, I call on him to check on him, make sure he's okay.
Just to make sure, yes.
We was at a meeting last week, and Gina said, I don't think I saw you in like a day and a half. Are you doing okay? Yeah, I was like, yeah, I'm fine. So, but we do. We talk to each other quite often, and we try to work together on, especially with the law enforcement issues that involve the school system and goes on in the county. And a lot of people don't understand how that dynamic is, but the school resource officers do not belong to the sheriff's office.
Right.
And so they have their own police department. It falls under the company police heading. And so they have their own police department there. They're employees of the school system. But still, from time to time, we talk to each other about the things that are happening and just run some things, bounce some things off each other,
Sure.
and kind of come up with good ideas and plans.
Actually, we probably talk to each other more because we have to be very careful to integrate and communicate a lot
Right.
more so we don't trample each other in the
Yeah.
processes.
And as you know, we had an incident Friday night.
Mm-hmm.
It's been very well known about the evacuation of the football field and those type of things. And so we're going to talk about some of those things and some of the issues that's happened this week. But that's a good, for instance, of how we try to communicate with each other and try to have safety planning and different things that come together. So when we have an event that affects both the towns and the county and the school system, that we're on a good working relationship and a good page to work with each other and try to accomplish the things we need to accomplish.
It is nice to be able to have those plans in case there are problems and emergencies that evacuations are needed or the law enforcement need to have presence there in the school systems. And it's one of those things you can't plan enough for, and you learn from every time something. I'm sure with this incident, there are things that the school system and law enforcement learned
Right.
how to do things better. And
Oh,
it's always
sure.
good to be able to learn and implement that next time.
We actually met on Sunday afternoon, and Sheriff Palmer was gracious enough to come and meet with all of because it's not just our SROs that were involved. The administration and the folks in charge of the football game, everybody is involved at that point. So Sheriff Palmer came and we actually began looking at our processes and taking a look at how the decision was made and what we can do better next time.
There's nothing that we can do that's going to be 100% foolproof, that's going to run perfect, and everything is going to run flawlessly. There's going to be issues and things that you don't think about, that you don't prepare for. It may be different than what you planned for. But that's one of the things we had a discussion about in our meeting, was that even though things are fluid and things change, we still need to be vigilant on having safety planning and planning for events and things to happen. And one of the things and Dr. Conley, you might know of an incident that I'm not aware of, but I don't think we've ever planned or had a safety planning particularly for a football game or particularly for a incident at the gym. And so those are one of the things that we have been discussing. We do have safety planning within the schools and things that relates to the schools and during the school day and buses and all those kind of things. But it's such a different dynamic when you have
Yes.
sporting events.
You're
And-
exactly right. We, to a point, have overthought what do kids do in the classroom in the event of an active shooter? What happens if there's a weather incident like a tornado? But never had we really thought about having 1,500 people on our campus because the school people, we just think about our kids. We've never really thought about
Right.
being in charge of the community at large that way. And we're living in an imperfect world, and we have to be flexible and be able to compensate, because when folks are on our campus, it's our charge to keep them safe as well.
Right. But I will tell you one other thing with the safety planning that we've already done in the past of working with the school system and those events for evacuations for the school and evacuations for weather events and those type of things. A lot of those are very similar to what you would do in the event of a football game or a lot of people on your campus. So a lot of that, the administrative staff and the resource officers just kicked in automatically because it's things they've already prepared for and trained for in other situations, and it worked out pretty good. It worked out fairly flawless.
The scale had changed,
Uh-huh.
but the process was the same.
Right. And so what we discussed on our meeting Sunday was how do we take what we already know and how do we take for this incident and take that a step further and do some particular safety planning for outdoor events, for, basketball games in a crowded gym, for softball, baseball games, track events, whatever it may be. How do we take that a step further, and what did we learn from these experiences that we can build off of? And quite frankly, we try to look at all the good things that happen. We try to look at any bad things we can find and any potential possibilities, because on this particular situation, we had an incident that happened off campus, just in the close proximity to the campus. So the question naturally arises out of that. Well, what if it had been different? What if we'd had an incident that happened at the ball game, on the field, or in the stands? So how did what we did, how did that play an effect? Would we have done anything different if that would have been on campus? Or if we would have done it the same way, how could we have done it better? So that's one of the things that we constantly try to evaluate and look at as we do planning. And I think we had a discussion that we're going to try to not only come up with these safety plannings, but do a whole lot more of different types of training throughout the school year. We do training now. We do active shooter drills and tornado drills and fire drills and all those drills that the kids do now. But I think it's we need to, as I said in the meeting, I think we need to do this so much that we're sick of doing it, and that we just
It's second nature.
right, and that it's just second nature to us, And so I know that's very hard for the school system and for their administrative staff, because they do have other obligations as far as lesson planning and teaching kids and testing and all those things that come through the school system. But I think Dr. Conley would agree that the safety of the kids come first.
Absolutely.
Among everything else.
There's actually no more critical lesson, and something that's really opened our eyes up to. We've done a lot of training, as you said, Sheriff, that's very school specific. But as you look at the news nationwide, what we're seeing are shootings in shopping malls and movie theaters, and so we've got to get out of that this could just happen at school mindset and train our kids to do that run, hide, fight, and what to look for in case, God forbid, they're in a situation somewhere in their life where there's an active shooter somewhere besides the school.
And one thing I think that we really honestly I particularly don't know where to go with it from now. I think it's something we need to have a discussion about, but how do we train our community? It's easy to train our kids. We have a captive audience for our kids, and we can train our kids, and it's even relatively easy to train the parents because we have that connection with the school system and can do things to get information to them. But I think our natural next step is, how do we train our community in response to an evacuation or those type of things, but without tipping off trade secrets to someone that might do something bad. Right.
In this particular situation, how was that handled, and how did the crowd respond to the evacuation orders?
The crowd responded fantastic. Everyone, I don't think there was a single bump in the road about anyone asking questions. The announcer asked for everyone to please leave on the Lowe's side. They wanted to keep them away from the side where the crime had actually occurred, and everyone just moved quietly and calmly out of the gates. And leaving was a little hectic, but it always is after a ball game. It was no more hectic than normal.
It's
anytime.
a lot of traffic to
it
get
is.
out on the roadways there.
So that's something that we want to look at about releasing. Maybe we would hold in the gym and release people in a staggered way so that there could be a steady stream of people leaving without everyone trying to get out at once. I mean, that's something that we learned from this event, that maybe we can find a system to manage the folks who are going to their cars in a better situation, so it's just not that cluster in the parking lot of everybody trying to get out at once. Because then, God forbid, if somebody did panic trying to race out, it could have caused something. So that's one thing for sure we're looking at.
And when's the last time that an event like this has ever prompted an evacuation? Any time in your history as superintendent? Can you remember?
The only evacuations I remember were in response. They were in daytime responses to bomb threats.
Right.
And that's
the only ones I'm aware of.
That's all I remember. And I believe when I was principal of Andrews Elementary, there was a 2-week period where we had 4. I don't know if you remember back then, but it seemed like it was one after another. In our process, then we had to clear the building, we had to get the dog in, and reunifying all those little ones with their parents. So some of those children, that was just a real traumatizing time. But as Derek said, it ingrained in me the process of making it happen.
And I think a lot of times people that's not familiar with the procedures that have to do with that, they don't understand what's going on behind the scenes that has to be done.
Right.
They just think it's a matter of just walking out of your stands and getting in your car and leaving. But there's everything from EMS, of having to deal with staging EMS, to fire departments, to law enforcement, with the bomb threats, and to get kids out of school and those type of things. You have reunification sites and making sure you have a head count for all your kids and knowing where they're at, and if you have to transport to a different site, getting buses lined up and getting buses transported.
And we can't let a child leave with someone that is not on their pickup list. So we have emergency folders with all of that information and radios so that we can make sure that students leave with the appropriate person.
There was a question asked on Facebook Live about were we concerned about the shooter blending in with the crowd. I think that's what prompted the evacuation. For just a little bit, the latest information we had was the subject ran from the scene toward the football game, toward the high school. And so that's one of the things that prompted the evacuation, that there was a concern that he was going toward the school or toward the crowd or blended in with the crowd. So we had officers lined up between the school and the crowd along those fence lines and between where the shooter was, to try to get a visual if he tried to cross the road or come toward the school or anything like that. And so that's why the evacuation was trying to prevent that from happening. But with that, like I said, there's no perfect solution or there's no perfect answer to that. There's potential problems that arise from doing an evacuation in the middle of all that. So that's the things what we were discussing is what was the good things about doing the evacuation, what was the bad things about doing it. What if the shooter had already gotten to the high school and was at the parking lot, and now we flushed a bunch of people into the parking lot that blended in with him, So we discussed all those issues and all those problems come with that. And like I say, there's not a perfect answer to that, but I think it is something worth just having a discussion about, and so we can think about it the next time that something like this happens.
There are a lot of split-second decisions you have to make, and hoping that those are the right decisions. You never know all the details all at once, so you have to do what you feel is.
And that's why I say those safety plans have to be fluid, because you may have a safety plan that your plan is to evacuate or to go to the gym or to evacuate the campus, wherever it may be. But then what if you have a situation where someone is at the parking lot with a gun? And
how do we protect everyone and keep them in?
Yeah, how do you keep them in at that point?
Right.
So,
and yet it's an open air field. It could be like fish in a barrel. There's a lot of things. So we're looking at where would we go for shelter?
Yeah.
Where
would those reunification sites be? What would we do at that point? So
had this shooter, had he actually made it onto the campus, or he had run toward the campus?
The best information we have now is that he had not, that he had made it going around the building toward the campus and had went to his vehicle and left in a vehicle. So that was the latest information we had at that point. So there was no information, unless you've received some information, that he had ever been to the campus or made it to the campus.
No, I never received anything like that.
Right. So there was never one of the things we had talked about was that this, even though as bad as it was, and if we could change it, we certainly would, and we don't want anyone to have lost their life. But in a good way, this was a great training experience for us and for the school, because it did raise those questions.
Absolutely.
It opened our eyes to some things and raised those questions as to what are good things about what we're doing and what are bad things about what we're doing, and what do we need to change, and then what do we need to leave the same, right? Because there are some things that work great and work flawlessly, and we did exactly the right thing, and that's the way it needs to be. So it's just an evaluation all the way around about good things and bad things.
My heart does break for the Lowry family. I can't imagine what that family is going through with that. And we just want to send our thoughts and prayers and condolences to the family and friends
we certainly
of the victim, and are so saddened by this tragedy. But it does make us have to take a closer look at things.
Right.
And one of the situations, too many different access points to our schools. I know some schools are all fenced in. They have to go through a guard shack to get in there, and it feels like a jail.
Absolutely.
Are we too open to the community?
Absolutely. Our schools are old schools, and they're beautiful in their architecture, but they were built in a time in the 40s and 50s when we were trying to be open and inviting and to welcome the community, because in a societal way that's what we wanted the school to be at that time. Now what we're finding, Murphy High School alone has over 50 entrances, not counting windows. It is terrifying to have to manage and monitor all those entrances. So basically we keep everything as locked up as possible, but on most campuses, our high schools, there are multiple buildings. So even students walking from building to building, it's a scary thing, and I hate to say it out loud, but they're vulnerable.
And the thing about it is, like I say, there's always good things and bad things about every situation. So even with the campuses being open, it's not completely bad and it's not all bad. I mean, if you think about the fact that if you had an active shooter and people had to flee,
True.
You're wide open. You can flee in any direction you want to flee in, basically. The only boundary really is the river, at Murphy High School. So you can get away. You can get off campus. So there's good things about it, too. So a lot of these things is really depends on how you look at it and how you evaluate it. So one of the things, too, is the fact of that we looked at the fact of about doing the evacuation. One of the things we went back and critiqued and looked at that afterwards was the fact of that at school time and during the school day, you kind of have everybody corralled to a certain age and employees and things of that nature. So if, say, you're a middle school teacher, you know that all your kids are going to be between the ages of 12 and 15 for the most part. You may have some interns over there or may have an EC class or something like that that's going on. But mostly you know what your ranges are, and they've been trained and that kind of thing. But in a sporting event, you have everyone from infants in a carrier to people 90 years old that's handicapped, wheelchairs, walkers, whatever it may be. So you've got that whole entire population of the community there. So one of the things we had talked about is by doing the evacuation, one of the things is, what about the people there who, for kids, for example, who maybe their parents had dropped them off at the ball game.
Yes.
And they just did an evacuation. The announcer said evacuate to the street and go exit this way. What about those kids whose parents were planning on coming an hour later to pick them up or 45 minutes later to pick them up? That's one of the things that we had discussed is we need to really develop on those things, reunification sites, places for people to go who don't have a way out of there, people who don't have a ride, or maybe their ride went to town to get a burger while they was at the ball game and they're at the ball game without a car, So where are we going to send people? Where are they going to go? And we had a very lengthy discussion about that, about those things.
Yes.
Maybe that's something that we could either open the gym up for to house kids and people that didn't have anywhere to go, or maybe somewhere off-site to do that. So we're all in those discussions on the safety plannings, and that's one of the things that we talked about, that we could do things a little bit better.
And times have changed a little bit too. Even though that those kids may have no place to go, most of them have cell phones. They can text or call their parents and say, "Hey, I need you to come back right now." Back in our day in school, we would have to go to the office and say, "May I use the telephone, please?" And there'd be a line of students
lined out the door.
Yes.
Lined out the door. So it is nice that we have those cell phones. I know they can cause distractions at times, but in emergency situations like that, it's so valuable to be able to communicate with
Absolutely.
their guardians.
And not only that, but with the availability of having cell phones and those type of things, is that if the shooter had have come to the school or was in the parking lot or around behind the building, you always have that possibility of somebody with a cell phone could have called 911 and said, "I see where he's at. He's here." Whereas you said in days before, you would have to go find a phone somewhere to notify somebody of that. So technology can be a very good thing. It can be distracting. It can be bad things, but it also can be very helpful tools too. But in evaluating this and looking at that, those conversations were the type of things we were having on Sunday, is about the things that we could have done better, that we didn't think about because we've not really thought about, football games on a Friday night.
And all of our principals attended, not just the administrators who were involved in the decision, so they could learn from the process as well.
And I know that Derek probably doesn't want me to mention this, but I'm going to anyway. If you are in a situation and you see, I'm currently looking at the person with a gun right now. 911 does have the ability, if you're in a situation and you don't want to make that phone call, you can actually text to 911 now if you don't want to be overheard reporting that kind of thing. But don't use that as the primary, only if you're...
Right. Don't use it as primary. You know, those things are set up for people who have hearing impairments that, like you say, that may be hiding in a house, that can't speak, that can't talk. They do have those capabilities of text to 911. We do not want that to be the primary communication, because dispatch does have to ask questions and things and need responses to that. But it is good to have, and it's good to use when you need it. Most phones have an emergency 911 button on it too. And so if you get familiar with the phone and know how to do that, so when the event rises, that you can actually manipulate your phone and call 911 without ever having to dial the numbers.
Right. How good is the triangulation at this point now? If you needed to call and just lay your phone down and not speak to the dispatcher, how close does it get to that phone?
If it can reach multiple towers, it's fairly accurate.
Okay.
Generally, if you reach one tower, it will give you a general direction, give you a heading, a compass heading, and approximate range of where that is. If you can reach multiple towers, it'll triangulate your spot, and it's usually down within 10 feet or so of where the phone is. So
to me, I'm so amazed by just looking at my current location on Google Maps, because I'll be at home, I just pull up a map and it shows me that I'm sitting in the kitchen, and I am sitting in the kitchen, or I'm at the other end of the house where the bedroom is, and it's so close on Google Maps by using that, I guess, triangulation to find me. Which is kind of scary at times, but it's nice. It's nice when you're searching for somebody.
And also too, for parents, I want to mention this too, and you may have information on this, I'm not sure, but there are apps that you can download to your child's phones that are tracking apps that tracks where the phone is and where your child is and those type of things.
Your husband too.
Yeah, your husband, your wife, your dog, if you want to strap your phone to your dog or whatever it may be, but. It does track where you're at in your location, and so they are those apps that you can put on your phone. Most phones have GPS already on the phone, and you can utilize those type of things too. So if you're going to, my suggestion is, if you're going to send kids to a ball game or anywhere to the park, wherever it may be, and you're not going to be there with them, do try to have some kind of service on their phone like that where you can track and know where they are. And
make sure their location services is turned on.
Right.
Because even if you don't have an app, if something were to happen, they could be tracked that way if we have the number.
Yeah.
So.
And like I say, we'd love to sit here and tell you that everything's a perfect world and all plans are there and everything works perfectly and we have no issues or problems. But unfortunately, that's not true. And but we do the best we can, and we make the best preparations and planning we can. And like I say, on those type of things that happen on Friday night, those are things that you hope you plan for 1,000 times and you never need. That's but right. The one time you need them, you're glad you did planning for them. So those are the things that we try to prepare for.
Well, since we do have an active hurricane headed to the central part of the state, we're not going to see the effects that the eastern part of the state has seen. But we depend a lot on reverse 911 calling. Now it's texting or emailing, and they do the phone calls as well. So let's talk about Nixle for a moment, because I'm sure that's a service. It was used the night of this event that we're talking about. Does the school have its own reverse 911 for emergency, or do they depend on Nixle for the county emergency services?
We have our own automated call system. I don't think we're as quick as Nixle.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have that.
And I see a lot of times people ask about Nixle. How do I didn't get this phone call. How do I sign up? So let me just go ahead and say you can go to nixle.com, and I think it says for residents. You click there and you can type in your address, your phone number, your email address, however you want to get notified. And a lot of times it's narrowed down to certain communities. So if something's happening in Andrews, then the people in Hiawassee Dam may not get that notification, but you do need to sign up for this.
However, if you sign up for the text,
you do get everything.
You get everything, no matter where you're at.
Yeah. And as a radio station media person, I like that.
Yeah. So a lot of people, when we had the incident down in the 294 area where the Nixle went out and people in Peachtree and Andrews were getting the message, we had a lot of questions about that. Why am I getting message if something happened in the Hiawassee Dam area? And quite simply, if you do the text, sign up for the text messaging, then you will get that message regardless of where you're at. You can be in Atlanta and get the message. So
yeah, it's a great service. It's a great way to get the word out to folks, because I'll get those messages and I'll share them on our Facebook page, and those get shared multiple times there, and other media outlets can get that.
Right.
And I believe it's called Nixle, Nixle, right?
I think so. I think that's what it is.
I think I saw a misspelling of that.
Yeah.
On our Facebook live feed, but Nixle, or you can send a text message to 888-777 with your zip code and sign up that way. So if you just send a text message to 888-777 and put the zip code in the body of your text, you'll automatically sign up that way.
Wow. Okay.
We learned something new today.
I did. I did not realize it was that easy. That's great.
Yeah, so a lot of folks use that way, and that just means they're automatically signed up for the text messaging. Or you go to the county government website and sign up there as well.
Right.
They have a link to it.
Yeah. So, and it's very important to get those messages and get those things as they come out. Like I say, a lot of times in your neighborhoods, if you're living nearby something, you may be late at night, you could be asleep, and may not know that something's happening next door. So it's a good way to get the message and know that what's going on out there. So please sign up for that.
And it's good for things like crime happening, breaking news right now. I don't really consider it a news service. I consider it a public safety type thing.
Yes.
And also for weather events that are like things that are right now that will alert you there as well.
But going back to the ball game and going back to the football game, that's the other part of the conversation we had. Is the safety planning and the things you do for that goes beyond just a shooter situation. It goes to what happened if you're at the ball game and all of a sudden a freak storm popped up and there was a lightning strike and people were injured. What do you do if a
power
tornado,
outage?
Power outage. What do you do
The
if,
whole field goes
know,
black, and you have to.
Yeah.
We wouldn't even have the loudspeaker at that point. So what do we do?
Right.
That's a good point.
So there's a lot of things to think about. There's a lot of things to plan for. So those are the things that we're trying to put together and help the school system come up with and give ideas for that.
And a lot of those things take financial resources to have backup plans, like the idea of maybe having a backup generator there when the power does fail to bring up those lights, bring up those PA systems. I know I've been planning for years. I need generators at all of my locations to stay on the air, but I realize that for my transmitter side, I need a 3-phase generator, and that's like $20,000. Like, a small radio station. We don't have that kind of money to play around with. So all these planning ideas may cost some money to implement, but they're good to have those plans, and it's nice to have the money too.
It is. And we do have generators at the schools, but they run just very basic emergency lights to lighting the exits. It's very limited what our generators will support.
Other thing I want to mention real quick before we go, the school system, Dr. Conley and the school system was able to get a grant procurement to get some more resource officers for the school.
I was glad to hear about that.
And I know that's something that Dr. Conley has worked on for a long time, of trying to get more help down there and more resource officers. And so hopefully the schools and the kids in the schools will see a little bit more presence, a little bit more protection there within the school system.
So we'll be jumping from how many officers to how many?
From 4 to 10.
So an additional 6 officers.
If we can, but honestly, we're having a very limited number of people apply. Apparently, not a lot of folks going into being a cop or a teacher these days. But we're taking applications for school resource officer if anybody's
I will
interested.
say this about that. As me and the chief deputy was trying to put together some numbers and things, we were looking. And just in the school system, this was before the 10 officers. I'm sorry to give you this information, but before the 10 officers, there, with the openings that was in the school system, with the sheriff's office, Murphy Police Department, Andrews Police Department, and Cherokee Tribal Police, there was 23 open law enforcement positions for Cherokee County.
Wow.
23. The last basic law enforcement training we had 8 people sign up for it. And so that kind of shows you that ratio of job openings and people going into law enforcement. The highway patrol is down almost 200 troopers in the state of North Carolina right now. They just can't get people to apply.
So law enforcement is not the glamorous career it used to be, right?
No, it's not. And so with everything that's happened in recent years with the media and all the things that you see bombarded on TV every day about law enforcement, and quite frankly, Dr. Connolly will tell you that, when she's out trying to find law enforcement officers for her school, the pay for law enforcement is not there as a substantial incentive to get
It's
people to
not.
want to do that for a career.
Someone was asking me the other day, do SROs, do they get summers off?
Our SROs work 11 months, so they get 1 month off.
Okay. I was trying to bring a selling point there.
And actually, and thank you for that. But just
Yeah.
like teachers, they don't have their summers off; they're unemployed for 3 months.
Right.
So
It's not a paid vacation.
Not a
no,
paid
it's not a
vacation.
paid vacation. Yes.
Yeah. So, but I just want to say that about law enforcement, because a lot of people say, well, why don't you get more positions, or why don't the commissioners give you 10 more officers or whatever? Well, that's all fine and good, but
A lot of
where are
people,
you going to find the people to?
a lot of people do not
want
want to put their lives on the line for their job.
That's true. That's
So
true.
it is a very dangerous job. Carol just mentioned it's a dangerous job.
Yeah.
And
It is.
a lot of people don't want to go through being able to get shot at and then hear a media outlet says this is a bad cop. They're, because the media outlets nationwide can take those stories and sensationalize those.
Right.
And instead of reporting on the good things that our law enforcement community does, they
Right.
report on the bad. And
Absolutely.
The school resource officers do have the basic law enforcement training that any law enforcement officer in the state of North Carolina has. Then it's up to the school, the employer, just like it would be the sheriff's office or whoever, to do the in-service training and any additional trainings that they
And
want
there's
to do at that
specialized
point.
school resource officer
Right.
training. It's a little different in that that while a sheriff's deputy and a school resource officer have a lot of similar missions, the vision is a little different because we see the school resource officer as someone who actually engages with the students in a positive educational way. And one of the things we're so excited about having 10 now, previously we've not been able to give any of our SROs any instructional duties like bringing back the DARE program or drug
Right.
education. And now that they'll be stationed at a school and will be less likely to be called away, we'll see a lot more of that interaction with the students in an educational and a relationship building kind of way that we
Very
hope
good.
will have positive outcomes.
And we'll have 10 SROs. We have 13 campuses, so we're not quite to one per campus yet, but
We
we're
have
getting close.
13 schools and 12 campuses because Hiawassee Dam counts as one campus. So we can kind of
yes.
cheat there and use one person for 2 schools. So that helps.
Well, a lot of progress.
So we're only 2 away from having 1 per school. And the proximity and the closeness of some of the schools, for example, Andrews High School and Andrews Elementary, preclude itself to being able to share maybe a little bit better.
Right.
So.
All right. Anything you want to add before we close out our show? I see our time is getting near.
Yeah, it's gotten away from us real quick, but I just want to tell everybody out there to be safe. And the hurricane coming in, it does not look like it's going to affect us that drastically out here. I think the latest weather report I got from Robin Caldwell was 1 to 2 inches of rain, and the wind's just a normal brisk day. I don't think it's going to be anything too awful bad. So,
That's
but,
good news.
but we never know. I mean, it could be enough for trees to come down or a power line to come down somewhere.
And sometimes our processes are affected if we're in a state of emergency, which means they may need to commandeer our buses and some of our folks who work and go there, and that would affect our processes here. So we're on alert.
Let me do say one other thing, because people have asked. We do have officers that either were at the coast this week or were going out this weekend to the coast to help out with efforts out there. We had several people that's on vacation this week, so when they get back next week, we're going to look at Monday and maybe if we can spare some people, send them down to help with law enforcement efforts there on the coast and help them get back on their feet out there. We do have mutual aid agreement with all 100 counties in the state of North Carolina. So we're able to go out and help any county that has need in North Carolina. So we'll be sending some people down next week, hopefully.
And I did share a post this morning from Cherokee County Emergency Management of some of our fire departments being out in that area helping out as well. So a lot of folks from our area, it's going to take a lot as far as cleanup
It is.
in the recovery from
If you
Florence.
looked at what happened in Houston with the amount of rain they had there and the amount of days and weeks it took for that water to go down,
Yep.
you're looking at basically desert, dry, flat lands there for the most part where that hit. In the edge of North Carolina, you're looking at swamp areas and a lot of water areas already. So it could take a long time for the water to go away out there. So we're just going to try to do everything we can to help our brothers and sisters out there on the coast.
All right. Well, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your time today. Dr. Conley and Sheriff Palmer, we appreciate you greatly. You're tuned to 105.5 FM, 1320 AM, cable TV channel 25, and worldwide. We're at country.am. And let's end our video feed here, and then I'll end our radio feed. So stay tuned. We have your weather forecast coming up in just a moment, and followed by Pastor Aud Brown and the Little Brasstown Baptist Church. Your forecast next. It's brought to you by Carpet Mart.
From the WKRK forecast